Hey, good evening, and welcome to another session from the Old Wise Asylum. Another year nearly gone. Oh, end of the count, let's say. The year, of course, doesn't end until April, which is why we never get it right, and they get it right. They're still working to the old calendar. And of course, we're all in this world fiction, and they want you fixed on a pretend one. But never mind, the number changes, therefore it's real. Because it's real in everybody's heads. But yeah, hope you had a good Christmas. No major dramas, I do hope. So, how did it go for you? Did you get before the Christmas come? Did you come down the chimney? Well, there's not that many chimneys left these days, is it? It's all gas-fired central heating and such. But if you've got a wood burner, then you're definitely going to get a visit. Unless he's got a new way in. I'm not sure he's got the key fob for the garage door. So that's possibly true as well. So, hey, what you got? What you wanted, and I hope everybody had a bit of peace in their family meets and that nobody had major breakdowns and tried to kill each other. So it's got to be good if you got to this stage without any of that. And of course it's New Year's Eve and everybody will be out on the town. Nothing like it would have been once a day, but still I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of kids out there having a good time, and why not? Interesting week, even while everybody's been obviously celebrating, but this war is just getting worse and worse. It's clearly just about wiping everybody out from these areas that they're attacking. 4 fronts now. They're on Lebanon, Syria now, and of course Iraq, as well as Gaza. Now, I don't know by anybody's magic, but as a nation, if you're warring on 4 fronts and then still claiming to be a victim, I don't think that's acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. It's gone way beyond anybody sort of excusing this continued slaughter, because that's exactly what it is. So, you know, anybody protesting for peace, good on you. Don't like what I'm seeing with some of these fringe Islamic games. They are now calling prayer in a Welsh town, because this is what the fanatics have been after for a long time. Now, that's a breach of the peace. It's not only a breach of the peace, it would cause alarm and distress to non-Muslims. This cannot be allowed to be expanded. You've got a pretend acclaimed king who says, I love all faiths, except the natives. So keep that in mind. It's a big gig coming from on high. It's the fruitcakes that are going to push it. And that is, in my opinion, going to probably be one of the biggest kickers of this move to pulling in the second horse. And of course we can see again, it's not a sword, it's more of a dagger, isn't it? It's a knife. Apocalypse that we're being shown, that our guests, or let's say the latest ones in the last few years, certainly don't have our interests at heart. In fact, quite the opposite. None of us are going to benefit from this mass immigration because they're going to be so unruly And remember, they're being backed by the UN. There's now a lot of noise in America about the fact there are UN soldiers massing in Mexico, and that Trudeau did a deal in similar situations some time ago, and most of them, or in fact all of them, are actually Chinese. So the Americans are getting a little bit, whoa, what's going on there? So there's definitely some big moves. Listening to the fruit bats over the year, they've actually been talking about that, because of course they've not had it all their own way this year, and of course they've been pushing forward. Well, we are going to, what we need to do now, you're going to have to accept as part and parcel of moving to this transition, all that. You know, they've actually, you can see in their speak, if you've been paying attention through the year, that the adage that we will have a new world order by consent or by force, we can see that there's a tipping point now. The consent side isn't as clear, not as strong as it perhaps was right up until maybe a year ago, when people started to realise the first horse, as a revelation for everybody for paying attention. You could see then that all of a sudden the high trust society can no longer be afforded to the state, the very state that's now governing or ruling our nation. It's got no bearing whatsoever on the nation. It's purely a corporate or private controlled institution, operation, and they want a pay, so they're looking for profit. People are the profit, and of course they've managed to create, or they're very creative, let's say, and they've managed to come up with some exceptionally excellent methods by which they can start to carve nations up. And I think I've had a good insight into a lot of those weapons in the day, and unfortunately I can see that they've only expanded and they're ready to launch all sorts of malarkey and nonsense, so that's not good. It's not good at all. But tonight, if we may later, I want to speak about, it's a continuation of what we discussed last year in a video about the Sassoons and the Dangoor and another one, I can't remember its name offhand, and how exceptionally powerful these people were, and specifically operating in the East. Well, there's more data come out in a paper by a particular chap who shows you from 1839, he pretty much keys in all the major points at which the House of Rothschild basically shoved itself into a point of such influence. And of course, it's capitalising upon its deals as well, that we can actually start to see now. It's difficult for people, if you're paying attention, to start to carry on thinking that this divide of the earth, i.e. East-West, is anything other than theatre, and that it's being projected onto the screen, but of course we have to act in order that the script they want to play out is enacted. Which, you know, we've looked at Prince Philip from our perspective, as he said, their problem and only problem is overpopulation. And when asked any ideas, he just let you know that it's can you not guess? Well, of course we can guess. The World Wildlife Fund was not about wildlife, it was about the cattle, the humans. That's what that system's been all about, and of course it's been all over Africa, and it's been funded by weak people who believe that the best form of charity is to just throw money at something and believe what they say they're going to do, and ignore the fact that the CEO is always riding around in a Bentley, a Rolls, or some such, and if they're very clever and they can become a power, and then they're into private jets. So, you know, everybody's funded it. If you've done that in the past, this is why these operations have been so successful in carving things up, and they're certainly moving with that ear on old Blighty. And it's sad, really. It's not good, but that's the situation we're in. we have to be aware. But of course, as we've discussed, we didn't jump on the first timeline, or if we did, at least you've woke up to a point that you won't be continuing to expand your fusion to that timeline. And now this other one's before us, it's pick a side. But as we're going to see, this corporate system that's now controlling everything, it's already decided. It's now all our troops on standby. It's already shipped an absolute shed load of troops out and off these islands. To what they're being used, we don't know. You've got Ukraine, but you've also got Gaza, you've got Lebanon, you've got Syria now. Strikes have gone on in Aleppo, and of course there's obviously trouble going on the Iran-Iraq border as Israel moves against Iran, because there's been some incidents over there in Iraq, and I think some US soldiers got killed or injured at least, which is not a good thing. The navies are over there. The Americans have actually used helicopters to attack some Houthi gunboats or some boats of some description. So it's it's there. It's on the sea. It's now in 4 quarters in the Middle East, and of course you've got pledges still going on about how they're going to keep giving money to the old Zelensky, the little fruit bat over there in Ukraine. Pretty much achieved what they wanted to achieve. The Donbass, all that area, the area that we've seen as potentially the greater Jerusalem, the real one that they're perhaps shifting everything out to, especially if they carry on, the government in Israel carries on debasing any semblance of goodwill coming from the Jewish fraternity, because that's basically what this game's doing at the moment. It's just dirtying the Jewish religion in all counts. And of course, we have to all keep in mind, as we've said, it's a war, so we expect all sorts to go on. We're not going to get miffed by it and, swoon at it, out discussing it. It's because there's basically nothing we can do. If you're not funding it, you're not funding it. If you're not voting these governments in that are doing this, you're not playing along. If you're alright, you're alright. Doesn't matter from where you come from, what culture. If you're playing this democracy game, then you are responsible for everything that's going on by these governments that people are voting in. So, that in mind, we'll just have a brief look at what's going on in the world. You've got this nut job in Argentina worrying, but there's a couple of things in there from him as well, so we just keep up with what he's up to. The Dutch, I believe, have put themselves on a war footing and told their population to be ready for war. I think that's more in relation to Ukraine. So there's a lot of things going on. Of course, you've got Geek Wilders in there now, so that's going to be a different game. We're seeing a shift to this right-wing side of things in Europe. So you can see that playing into the Third World War strategy, whereas this war's going on between two people, but all the nations that it's actually they're playing out on the streets are just going to spend and spend and spend and spend and spend until there's nothing left. And we can see through this document that we're going to look at, this paper, this is all a blank, just so we don't see that actually there is no division between China and all the systems that are controlled by the Holy See, or from the Holy See, via the court financiers. If we go back to Eustace Mullins, who he said are the House Rothschild, that they are just the court financiers. But of course, as John Coleman's shown us, they've got the fondies, you've got these other huge bodies of assets that have owed money from empire days, way back in the time, still exist, and that's also shifted over to the east. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it, all these puppets, cabinet member level, Senate member level, US, Australia, etc. Are these guys in because they've been promised some kind of supreme power position in this new world order? So it's not so much that as people might say, oh, they're all Jewish, because clearly these people are not. They're certainly not Torah Jews anyway, and there's a distinction, and the distinction is made by the Orthodox Jews, not the ultra where you're getting Abad Lubavitch and such, but at the base level, the Torah Jews, it's clear that there's a distinction between them and these other politicised, them that would say and call themselves Jews. But break that down and they're clearly not. Most of them that control Israel, that are moving Israel, are from Russia, and they don't even claim to be Jewish anymore. So what's going on there? What is the game really, the aim in relation to the population of Israel? What are they trying to achieve? Such a huge reaction that there's going to be just such a mess. They have to move to where Putin's just opened the whole up for them. This is Abad Lubavitch, by the way. Again, a distinction between Judaism as a biblical religion and this other system that takes its order from the Talmud. Anyway, could be interesting because it certainly shows you that it's just a shift, all of it. So this blag that they've got us all on sides here, there and everywhere, it really is them playing upon our ignorance, our inability to discern what's real and what isn't, what's belief and what's fact. Because we're in such a position that that's just en masse everywhere, in all cultures, in all religions, because you can see it. That's actually what's being manipulated by this evil, if you might call it, or Iblis, Satan, whichever term you associate with your antagonist. It can only have power because it manipulates what's false in us. So the more false it is in us, then obviously the more power that negative thing has over our affairs. So, interesting gig. Also, I was thinking that, so when you look at this Noahide system, that it's set up in such a way that they're going to get everybody to do it to themselves, to their own, so that it doesn't touch this new class that's rising itself up. And it's not Torah Jews, by the way, it's this other system. And they're clever, to the point that in this Noahide and specifically to the beheading stuff, these 21st degree Noahide judges are all going to be non-Jewish. They have to be Gentiles, so that these Gentiles doing it to Gentiles. So these 21st degree geezers are either just pure evil, they either hate their own race, or they're totally mind-controlled and programmed, which then carries down through to your command level through military, your command level through police, and then these private security operations that are all over the show. And that's how they've set that up there. So it's clever stuff and it's huge. It's a huge gig that they've got cracking on with, but they don't call it the great work of ages for nothing. Who's on? Good to see you, Sean, and all those who get what is true. Well, we're trying. We're exploring, are we not? And I think we do explore some good concepts that do give us some good ideas. Or at least show us that so much of what comes out from every orifice is pretty much nonsense. It's garbage, but you can get excited by it and waste your time on that. Slipknot says, "All right, Sean, everyone. Good evening, Slipknot, and evening to me." June says, "Good evening, Sean. Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year to you, June." Paul says, "Good evening, Sean, and everyone. Good evening to you, Paul." Mew says, "Good morning, afternoon, evening, and Happy New Year to Jace already in 2024. Hello, Sean and Trev. Hello, Mew. Gary Granato. Oh. Let's go. Hi, everybody. Well, let's go. And hi to you." June says, Paul, oh, yeah. Public Note says, yeah. We can see you and hear you, Sean. Yes, I know, I made sure tonight. Gracious. It wouldn't be right, though, if we didn't have a cock, would it? Let's be honest. Great stuff happening in Africa also, says Gary. Yeah, because you don't really get to hear much of it. You got to hear a lot of airtime when the book script were going on, because there were a lot of dissenting voices. I'm not surprised. They've been playing with this kind of stuff over there for donkeys. So I'm not surprised that they saw it first, but from what I can gather, the guys that stood up got knocked off, or at least they got removed from the theatre. So it's good that there's good things happening. But again, this will show, this document, that if people in Africa are believing that because it's a Chinese event, they've got away from the known monsters. The monsters were allowed to see. This is why they're the court financiers. You know, it all comes back to them. That's the way the scapegoat system works. And if you're happy to do that, you get to look like you've got the power. It's same with all these billionaires. You know, they're all fronts. You wouldn't be a billionaire if you were a billionaire and you became rebel. You would no longer be a billionaire either because you were dead, or they just take the lot. They're all in it and playing. Politicians, I think, a lot of them, especially if they're going for cabinet level, senator level, with power, they're being promised things, I think, because, you know. But some of them as well, like Starmer, he looks like a robot. He looks like he really doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. Like he doesn't want to be speaking what he's speaking. His eyes and his voice are not connected. There's something missing with that fella, which, from what I've seen and researched about programming, would suggest that that's exactly what's going on, and they've not managed to connect his all his energies with the program. Get that together, you're cracking. You've got Bill Clinton, you've got Cameron, you've got all these guys that did it with fervour. Tony Blair, for instance, you know, they loved it. They love it, these guys, because they connect the whole thing. But yeah, Starmer just seems stiff to me. He's really not. He's not all there with it, I don't think. Plus Armenia, yeah, Azerbaijan, yeah. But I think that's the military-industrial complex trying to hit Russia on another front. But it's just unfortunate that the Armenians are getting absolutely, you know, they're getting a bit of a good hiding over there. And of course, they're sort of allied with Russia in a sense because of the Orthodox side. If Putin starts to help the Armenians, which I think somebody's going to have to because these Azerbaijanis are getting a bit excited, then that's going to open a two-front war, isn't it? It's going to keep Russia at war, even if Ukraine settles down, which it's looking like that's going to have to be the case this year. But then Biden's talking it up the opposite, isn't he? Which Brzezinski, you know, hates Russia. It's all his game, his anti-Russia system. Kissinger man, Rockefeller man, Trilateral Commission. And he wrote the books that put this thesis together for the script to be written to shift it into a movie. You know? So it's a long gig, but Zbigniew Brzezinski is the key to understanding this hatred of Russia. Truth over lies says, I don't even think most of them would need to be mind controlled. Well, yeah, I mean, but they have been controlled, especially the younger ones, because this programming system has been in education since 1997. Well, we're a long way from 1997. You know, kids are leaving each year that have had another layer of programming and do. So I've seen some teachers talking about how Gen Z they're just unbelievably insane. You can't teach them. They know better than everything. Their attitude is outrageous. So obviously, where have they got that from? It's got to be internet. If they come into that to school, then they've obviously got that on whatever they've got on TV or whatever they're getting on their phone, their laptop, their iPad, I don't know. But they're basically saying that we're in trouble. These generation are insidiously just not having it, not having anything. They know the best. They're the kings of the world. Bit like what were created in the Third Reich, you know, the brown shirts. But this time, of course, we could class them as green shirts because it's all based on this wind and rain change stuff. So, you can see the parallels are there. I've wrote quite a few reports to show the parallel between the brown shirts and the green shirts and how they use them, because people forget just what actually happened as these kids started to come up and then worship the guy when they kicked that off for the, you know. So they program these generations who are then waiting for something to connect all them programs with that they've had in them. and they worship. And we can see that this move to this new system is inclusive of somebody who pulls it all together, and of course, from a religious perspective, classes himself as the Messiah. Or from the Catholic perspective, they see it as that he'll offer such great sort of remedies for the problems that we have, that certain quarters will declare him unbelievably fantastic, and he must be God, and he'll accept it. So it's a similar thing in it, Messiah. And of course, we've explored the Chinese side of what's been going on with the Catholic Church, in that the bishops set up that they have over there with a few little papal bulls and what have you. Sort of says that now that down the line the Chinese bishops are going to be in total control of the entire Vatican system. Of course, they pulled all the money in, didn't they? I'm surprised really that it hasn't affected Switzerland in a way that they've got a little bit pissed off. So suggests again with Sean Ross talking about the two monarchists and Republicans. Now, last time I suggested perhaps the Republicans had clearly got older, but I've watched a couple of things of late, and I thought to myself, maybe the monarchists have actually took over the Republicans. A bit like John Coleman says clearly that he joined MI6 because he wanted to fight communism. He didn't like it. Ended up in Africa and realised that the entire British Empire, of which MI6 is a part, was actually installing communist regimes everywhere. So talk about mirror image. But maybe, perhaps, well, I don't know. But again, it would be that they've merged. So the two sides are shown as presented, but at some point where before they merge, because of course they can smell the harvest of this that they've been trying to put together for such a long time. It would be futile for them to go to battle. Not to say that they won't, but I think it certainly, they'd have to take something drastic, maybe something out of both of their control, to pit them against each other at this stage, because the potential harvest from what it is they're intending to do is just way beyond our comprehension. They'd have the entire earth to themselves with the technology. Do you know what I'm saying? These high-speed railways, it's not for no reason. They want to be able to... I mean, they're probably Tolkien fans. You know, they probably all took on such as Tolkien's mythos and to see it in that dreamy thing and see everybody as orcs. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of gig. But as I said before, I don't think this has got anything to do with gods and goddesses. I think this is just man's time. And this is what we've created. Them by thinking to do it, and us by allowing him to do it. Not saying you haven't come down here before and been annoyed to you might well have been. You might have played a part in it, and now you're seeing each other side of it. Who knows these things? Drew says there's more than enough evil Gentiles about willing to sell us fellow Gentiles down the river. Yeah, but it's made it clear to me this week that is actually the case, that the 21st degree pusher now, who's the no hard judge, has to be a Gentile, because it has to do it to his own. Ooh, I wouldn't like to be in that position. Can you, the spiritual mark you're going to put against yourself and all those that follow you on a spiritual level. If you believe in transmigration to souls, you'd have to hope that as soon as they die, they get to see the gig and then they're born straight back into a family who's just about to go through. There has to be, otherwise there's no sense at all to this whole gig, is there? But transmigration of souls, in some sense, does actually... it's helped me in the past to see, well, why the fucking hell would somebody think that? Why would they do that? And why would they want to do it? But it's so bizarre, the mentality of what has to be done in order to keep the fake world alive on top of the earth. That's the way it's so inverse. We've discussed that before. I'm sure I've mentioned that before to you anyway. So Phil says, comfortably and dumb. Good evening, Sean and chat. Happy New Year to all. Happy New Year to you, Phil. Truth all lies is that. Happy New Year to all. Yeah, Happy New Year. Treen says, hi, Sean. Hiya, Treen. Cos has got the old gigs on, and he says he's got the old gigs on. And that t-shirt is super white. Is it? Yeah, it is, yeah. And it's my light as well. Do you know, I have to put my glasses on sometimes because it's just so bright. But you can't see anything otherwise. The cameras are not brilliant in these Macs, if I'm truthful. Other than that, they're the best thing on the planet for working on. Anyway, where are we? So thanks for that, Cos. I'm a blinding you with my lightness. Is that what it is? Mew says, Mrs. Mew said hello, Sean. Hello, Mrs. Mew. How are you doing? Guitar Girl says, Happy New Year, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Hello, Guitar Girl, and Happy New Year to you. Mark says, evening, Sean. Good evening to you, Mark. Untitled says, hi, Sean, on Flesh and Blood, Souls Possessing Beings. Happy New Year 224 to all. Happy New Year to you, sir. Right, let's get to some business. This was an interesting one, although I think it's more down to statins, but I just thought the map pretty interesting in that so it's a map of dementia and Alzheimer's, which you can see is all in the Western sort of influenced places, South Africa over there, you know, Australia, New Zealand, South America, and North America, Canada, you know, and basically Europe. And that's fluoridated water. Now, we're not really fluoridated over here in the UK, up in the north. I've also learned again this week, it's nothing like what the Americans have been having, and they've had it for a long time. But dementia and Alzheimer's for me is statins, because I know that the brain is made of cholesterol, the reproductive system's made of cholesterol, and if you're going to start limiting cholesterol, then of course what's not rebuilding itself correctly, that's the brain, and also the reproduction system. So I've always seen it and known in my heart that it is statins, but I'm not suggesting for a second that fluoride doesn't have some gig with it, because I would say it definitely does. So I thought, just as a matter, you can see where they've been really thrusting this stuff. See, it says there's some purple on there. Okay, yeah, it's a low, yeah. Interesting. But then a lot of these other places have been vaxxed to death, haven't they? So it's not like they've escaped. Charles is turning into a convener king, defending all religions, not just Christianity, writes Catherine Pepinster. Now he needs his family to hear the message of unity. And he's done it in front of his posh Christmas tree, because he is the super green king. And a billionaire in the message, live simply, he told us all, with his Christmas tree. A man with a private jet who has leached off other people's hard-earned money for several decades, this globalist WEF parasite has to go, says somebody on the old Twitter. But of course, he's next to his Christmas tree. Prince William, member of the Committee 300, said on November 3rd, 2017, there are too many people in the world, and that's why he's getting around your kids. Along with the rest of the New World Order 300, he now presides over the UN Agenda 21, Global Depopulation Plan for Mankind. Now, this is an interesting gig I picked up, because there is a bit of symbolism going on there. Is there not? Yeah, no. And don't forget, this little Flossie gave birth on the street, and nobody were told that. Look, there's so much fakery with this theatre. Because we saw a lot of this stuff with Kate as well when she were in the bumps. So, and then we got this, a suggestion. Is he? I have to look at his hands. Has he got the fat fingers, old Mountbatten there, or Battenberg, as he really is? We know he was a paedophile. So, that's what's blighty on the ritual. He's continuing, of course, coming home for Christmas didn't occur. They ate each other way too much to be sitting across from each other eating turkey or grouse or whatever it is. the royal family eats at Christmas. How then? Worried about graphing, says David Craig. Flexible, yep. Causes giving it the 2 eyeballs and the big squashy lips. Good evening, Sean and all, says David. Good evening to you. The salty straw man gives us a dove and some stars. Oh, I like that. David says more worried about graphene. Well, I'm not going to even touch on that, to be honest. But yeah. I mean, I am going to update the page on the site in relation to all that malarkey as well, because I have found some interesting stuff. And it's good to have it all in one place. So rather than all the garbage that's there that can be found, I'll just take you straight to good stuff and you can have a look at it and make your own mind up. Trin says, my Pam almost died on statins. Not the GP said it was the Spanish water she drunk on holiday. But in the end, admitted it was the statins. Had the shits for 6 weeks and couldn't keep a thing in. Just, what is that, starting on them? A guy called Dr. Malcolm McKendrick book, The Clot Thickens, statins elite. Yeah, I've seen it in so many people. And then they need to get on steroid. Then the skin's evaporating. It's not good. They're Rosemary's Baby. And then you've got the giving birth to the cushion on the street by the Miracle Flossie. It's just theatre. It's all theatre. And I mean, I watched a couple of videos over the week as well, where Biden and Charles were in the back end after they'd done some kind of thing. And the way that you could just sense the situation in the room, nobody was subservient to Charles in any way, shape or form. In fact, if anything, Biden was the guy who was cracking the jokes, doing all the talking, and everybody else were pretending he was exceptionally funny. Even Charlie Boy. So they're just bad actors. And one wonders, have they actually... Because this is another thing I've been looking at this week. This clone stuff. You know? It's rather worrying because there's a lot of celebrity incidences, and even one, Princess Beatrice, where they're out there in, doing the waves and then they malfunction. It's like, you look at it and you think, ooh, that would be one seriously programmed person malfunctioning. But it doesn't look like that. There's something about it that's just false, in the sense the eyes are not moving as you'd expect it if it were a breakdown. So you're looking, you're thinking, well, are these transhuman robots that have they got them all over the show and we don't even know it? I don't know. So that's all sorts of nonsense. Yeah, so it is all theatre, all of it, and we just suck it up and then act with it, if you're thick. And Tree says, which is why I thought Jared Kushner reminded me of Damien at the Home. Well, there were a lot of talk when Trump were in, because of the moves, some of the meetings that he seemed to be superior. That Kushner is perhaps the one that's going to come up with all the solving all the problems. But I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But there were a lot of stuff going on when the old trumpet were on the stage. Thousands of British soldiers are being placed on standby, ready to deploy within days as UK forces take over the lead on NATO's Rapid Response Force from the start of the new year. So, there we go. Now Europe's under PESCO, controlling our military. They're going to knock our lot off. Get them out of Blighty while they stick UN in. And Downing Street press operation lost all credibility as a reliable, truthful, objective operation under Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair was told in 2003. Because Campbell is on Twitter pulling everybody and calling them liars. People forget just how they lied through everything. Kemi Badenoch is named top minister of 2003 by Tory activists, with Suella Braverman and Penny Mordaunt in second and third. Are you kidding? Are they for real? And here she comes, childline entrepreneur. This Twixmas, we need to talk about death. It's today's me society wants to control the end of our lives in the same way we control what type of coffee we drink. Read the full column from Lucy Denny below. She's decided she might have to kill herself because she wants you to follow. Dame Esther Ranson, the daughter, gives heartbreaking insight into what could be last Christmas with her cancer-stricken mother, 83, as she considers assisted suicide abroad. So that means that she's out of the mix now because we all know what she is. We all know why she set up Childline. And they've got this New Jerusalem now, haven't they? Putin's just secured a shed load of beautiful territory that they call home. It's happening in Hawaii for the not so elitist ones, but the players, the traffickers, which is what we saw with that strange attack on the Hawaiian Islands earlier in the year. So, where are we now? UK politics. Did you get that? So this idiot, he's born in Scotland, raised in Scotland, with the heart of a Scot. Well, we've heard you talk. It's not a heart of a Scot, my old China. So he's clearly a fruit bat. Eritrean protesters attacked Met Police vans with sticks in lawless scenes outside the South London Theatre after community tensions boiled over, with 4 cops hurt and 8 people arrested. Yeah, we're following that yesterday. So this is 2 bunches of immigrants fighting against each other because they hate each other. So that's going on all over the show with these this new influx of immigrants. You know, I mean, when I'm talking about immigrants, I'm not so much talking about them that are born and bred here, obviously. We're talking about this lot that have been coming in the last 10 years, because if you think you can control them once they get bedded in, it doesn't matter which community you're in, forget it. Forget it. And remember who's at top of them, UN and police intelligence. So they're going to have power. It's set for all the systems that exist today here to get to lose power, and so that there's no way that anybody can come together and oppose it politically, in people power. But then we can in people power because we would have to do it correctly. That is a proper nut job, innit? Let's be honest. The nurses in the Royals Hospital were square and compass. I've seen that. So she's off bowing out now because she's just so exposed. She's retiring. She's entering her Sabbath from the Fruit Bats United. And maybe daughter's going to take over. Who knows? But don't ever think. Look, you can see it in her eyes. Yeah. I can see it, darling. I can see you. Never mind. So where's daughter? She doesn't look that bad yet. So that's gone back to that. Why? When there's others. But there's calling now. Now this is a dangerous gig. They're calling for, they want prayer calling. Now that's not on. And they're doing it in Wales, right, this week. They did it on Friday. And Preston now, Masjid East Salam Mosque wants permission to broadcast Muslim call to prayer. Mosque been opened in 2016. Free schools, this is what they've got them for. Got them to. This is a direct assault. This is not right. And Muslims need to know that. That's not going to that's not living according to the laws of the nation. And yeah, I don't like that. It's not a good move at all by communities. It really isn't a good move. And that, fair play, police did a pretty good job. They had it well set up. They divided them up and they had them completely and utterly cornered. But the little shitbags were having a do at them. I saw one probably police intelligence saying, just give me time to get my crew together and we'll sort it out. So, and we know that they've got that capacity, the police, because what they did with the miners. You know, they dealt with the miners as a military operation. They set them up, they corralled them. They did everything you would do to a military opponent. And beat the living shit out of the miners. I mean, I think that brought the protest, actually, on Blighty, the miners' strike. Abroad, insanity continues. A French sologamist who married himself. So he married himself. So there we go. Beam me up, Scotty, says the one that's put that up. Free tampons and menstrual pads now required in Canadian government-controlled men's restrooms, says Castro, the progeny of the Castro. I mean, he even looks like him. He's a fruit bat, him. People of Spain have now been protesting against socialism for 55 days in a row. It's probably nearer 60 now, because all these were this week. And people don't even know about it. And, you know, they said they're protesting against socialism. And Pentagon's announced that Secretary of State Antony Blinken has approved a $147.5 million worth of M107 155mm artillery munitions to Israel, bypassing Congress approval by activating a national emergency. And this chap says, we lost the war against Hamas and our victory will be to eliminate Netanyahu. Former Israeli Chief of Staff Dan Halutz. So obviously there's some serious things going on in Israel. Not everybody's backing this stuff. And stolen organs from dead Palestinians, I wonder when this had come up. The 80 corpses have been found with stolen organs. Government media office revealed that Israel delivered 80 mutilated corpses with stolen organs. I wonder when that we're going to kick in. Netanyahu said achieving peace in Israel's war with Hamas requires the destruction of the group, the demilitarisation of Gaza, and for Palestinian society to be de-radicalised. I want to know why there's nobody taking him in. Iran vows to remove Israel from existence after military chief is killed in airstrike. Why are none of the Arab countries taking in Palestinians? Not even Lebanon. What's going on there? What is that all about? And obviously things have not been going really well. The World Economic Forum needs a new meeting on the 15th to 19th of January to rebuild trust. And it's the 54th annual meeting. So they're rebuilding trust. So obviously they've lost the trust. They're trying their best to get it back. China's far west Xinjiang region will implement the nation's first rules on encouraging ethnic groups to mingle as part of President Xi Jinping's goal to forge one national identity. And remember, they're dismantling all Islamic everything systems over there. They want to do it a different way, yeah? Treasury regime, to ban traditional gas-powered vehicles in Canada by 2035 as part of the West's Great Reset agenda. Again, another way to start your travelling. Now, it's going to be difficult, isn't it, really? In Canada, it's massive. So these electric cars only do, 130? But Prime have pulled out now. They've put all the fleet back onto diesel. There's other operations en masse now getting rid of all their electronic stuff and going back to diesel. So it's dead in the water, the battery car. They should just transfer it straight away to hydrogen and water. And just, let's crack on. If you're serious about the planet, then we know you've killed a shed load of people that it actually showed us and put together engines that work on water. So we know they're there. We know they're there, It does all tie up, Everything ties up. So you hear, how has he got in up there in Scotland? How is a man like that? An Aggie squeezer land. Telling you what crack is. And what's happened to all Glasgow lads? Are they still watching football? Are they not watching what's going on? Did they hate Edinburgh that much? Are they not actually caring what's going down? I don't know. It's not very good, is it? Now, the fruit bat. Our geopolitical alignment is with the United States and Israel. We are not going to ally with communists, but he wants the Falklands back. So he's tied in with Israel. We've seen his rabbi. Why are they attacking Blighty if we're the bestest friends? He suggests that Argentina could issue debt to comply with $60 million lawsuit revealed to the nationalisation of oil company YPF was met with scepticism from investors. That was the plan we looked at last week. And look at that, the poor girl had to snog it like that. I mean, he's a lucky chap now. This guy's a superstar. This guy's going to live his dream. Everything he's ever wanted is going to come true. So there you go. He's politically aligned with the United States and Israel. So why is he attacking UK? What's Israel playing at there? You know what I'm saying? What they're playing at? I mean, he is a prize complete nut job. There's nothing good going to come out of that, is it? Nothing. So, what else can we have a bash at? Oh, why has that gone off? That should be on. Right, at least I know what I'm doing there. Oh, I don't know why that's clicked out like that. Right, so that is... This is actually the paper I was talking about. But before we do that, so I've actually made a report about it because it's important that people start to see that it's just a blag, this idea that we have to go to war and divide. As Shipton said, Mother Shipton, the other race is going to try and divide the world into two, but it fails, but there is a war. So I've just pulled out a few interesting quotes from it there. And then there's your... And then the video that we did on the Dango and the Sassoon, because of course they're also mentioned here, well, the Sassoon or anyway. But yeah, you know, the corporation China, it isn't what people think it is. They're trying to move everything out of the West over there and cause absolutely holy hell here with all this race nonsense that they built up over these last God knows how many years. So it's going to be interesting this year, let's be quite frank about it. 33 people you didn't know were in the WEF. Now, I don't know whether you do know or you don't, but so politicians, Tulsi Gabbard, she's one. She's also Council on Foreign Relations. Dan Crenshaw, J.R. Inslee, and his degree in Economics, University of Washington, Governor of Washington, all right. Javier Milei, the nut job from Argentina. There he is. Xi Jinping. Yeah, here's another, he's in there. The fruitcake, Jacinda, with the Adam's apple. Yeah. Rishi Sunak. There he is. Krishna Sunak. And Christopher A. Coons, Senator from Delaware. Delaware, a very important place. A bit like inner city kind of tackle. Vladimir Zelensky, the fruit bat actor. Megan Rapinoe, a soccer player, I don't know who that is. Andrea Bocelli. I don't like him, he's a brilliant singer. But I think I prefer Sarah Brightman, really. But yeah, there he is. Bono, the fruit bat. George the Clooney. Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Idris Elba, Gabriel, Tom Hanks, Ariana Huffington, founder of Thrive Global, Lang Lang, is a concert pianist, Madonna, the fruit bat, and she's been a fruit bat for a long time, that girl, Shakira, Spacey the paedophile, Charlize Theron, Greta the Thunberg, Will I Am, Yo-Yo Ma, never heard you, who's he? The Chinese parents in Paris who began blah blah blah. Oh, it's cellist, okay. Business, Jack Ma of Alibaba Group. Well, now that's interesting because the Rothschilds are very involved in the Alibaba Group, so we'll look at with that document. Peter Thiel, that's PayPal. Mark Zuckerberg, you all know him. Anderson Cooper, CNN host. Young global leaders Anderson Cooper and Leonardo DiCaprio are in the most exclusive private social network in the world. Baxter Dmitry is a writer of The People's Voice. Is that it? Oh, that's it. So I don't know whether you knew about them, but they're all part of the old gig. Now then. And a queen has abdicated today. Denmark's queen. She sounds like a bit of a... She got on with it, like, she actually... she stripped some of her relatives of titles in 2022. So she doesn't muck about, this Flossie, but she stood down. On the 14th of January, or next, yeah, so that's 2004. And she was on throne for 52 years. So there's going to be all change there in Denmark. Maybe she didn't want to play. I'm not doing that. Don't know, she looks like a grandma kind of character, doesn't she? And she sacked 4 young uns. So God knows what they were up to. I haven't read it all, but I only picked it up not long before. It was pretty breaking news. So there's been an abdication, which is always interesting because it's what's coming after that's in some cases quite important when they do this. Right, so the Rothschilds and the PRC, which is the People's Republic of China, banking, financial and other interactions between the Red Shield dynasty and the Red China. And it's by David Gardas, 2021. Mooney Arts. So you've got people, you've got all the as you'd expect. Faculty of Arts, Massart University, Department of Chinese Studies. Title of thesis, yeah, we've just said. Field of study, FFKSC, Culture Studies of China. And his supervisor was Michael Flegel. Michael Flegel, PhD. The Flegel. Year 221, number of pages 153. So it's not a massive thing, but the data in it is... so I've just... I mean, if you're interested in this, I suggest you, over time, come to see it, at least. Because it does cement the fact that this divide is just a false idiom. But based on all nonsenses, which is why it's become an act. So there's your basic content. Geordie, Mason, Blackstone, they're all in it. It goes through Alibaba, up Tanzanian Railway. Rothschilds are involved in it all. China Netcom, Oster Capital, Edmund the Rothschild Group, CEFC, China Energy. They're in it all, everything. So when weird stuff goes over there, it's just going in directly into the hands of these again. So there's basically it's a portrayal of the Rothschild family in Chinese public space and state-owned media. Currency wars, so they're well into alt media. The Rothschilds, Sassoons, and many others that are, and of course, so the Holy See. You know the images that we looked at the other week with all the Holy See families. Now that you've got that in your mind, you'll start to notice those names now when we look at stuff like this, because they're in there and they're in this. And so it's time we got sort of like became aware that it's not just British royal family, it's not just the American elite. And what we are missing, because this system as we see it here, there'll be one in China, with Chinese people, there'll be one in India, with Indian people, etc., etc., etc. So you're looking at this system and you're seeing the system that they employ in every nation. So they'll invade it, set up a secret society, real government in the background. Once they've achieved that, then they'll give it a feigned idea of independence from the British government, but not necessarily the private crown in the inner city or London side of things, which is what your secret societies are working for, unbeknown to them. But of course, if it's not unbeknown to them, they obviously don't see how big its reach is, because they keep it compartmentalised, don't they? So there's all this. Now here's your glossary. AIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment, Bank of China, BOQ, Bank of Condingo. So it gives you all the... but CBRC you'll hear a lot, CBIRC you'll hear a lot, CCP. So they're into all these serious pieces that make up the Chinese corporation. So there's no change in beneficiary and executors of the empire. It's still being run via the court financiers, the Rothschilds, on behalf of them families and others. It's not just them, but they're the ones that have accrued that at least you can relate to. So this is they're the beneficiaries of this total blag that they've got going on. So research time frame says, time frame of the wider research follows roughly 7 decades of the PRC's existence between 1949 and the present moment, 2021. This choice allows to map and analyse the development under different Chinese leaders and the changing circumstances of the two sides' interactions. Previous relations, which date back to the 1830s, are also briefly mentioned as they offer valuable insight into the routes from which subsequent dealings have stemmed. The work thus conveys a certain idea of Rothschild's relations with China during the Qing dynasty and right after its fall, for a period from around the 1920s until the establishment of the PRC, People's Republic of China. Direct interactions between the Rothschilds and the Chinese entities are not documented, with a few exceptions. Subsequently, interactions after 1949 follow. Nevertheless, available records for interactions during Mao's era are extremely scarce, and a major turning point occurred only after Deng Xiaoping came to power and economic reforms began in the late 1970s. The analysed interactions then became more comprehensive in the 1980s and 1990s, both in terms of their quality and the importance of individual interactions in selected strategic fields. By far the majority of documented interactions took place in the 21st century, which was primarily caused by two reasons. Firstly, the global banking and financial system got more transparent, and in the age of the internet, more publicly available data exists for the past few decades. More importantly, since the PRC joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001, the country has established deep connections with many foreign entities in banking, finance, commerce, and other fields. Among those individuals and institutions, some had a unique position and represented groundbreaking cooperation between China and the rest of the world, which is also one of the reasons for this case study. And of course, what he's going to show us is it's the Rothschilds and connected elites. It's a very interesting read, actually. Introduction to the family's background. So I've highlighted, because we know a lot of this stuff anyway, more than 200 animals and tens of plants bear the family name, e.g. Giraffa Camelopardis Rothschildi, or Flame Lily Gloriosa Rothschildiana, as well as numerous towns and streets in Israel, the world's most luxurious wine brands, and there is even a Rothschild Island in the Antarctica, and that comes from Ferguson in 1998. I mean, a lot of this we've seen, the beginnings of it. But here he says ancestors had previously lived in the house called Rothschild, which translates to with the red shield. They adopted the symbol as a family surname, which we know. Mayer himself was involved in trading rare coins, metals and antiques. Yeah, of course he was. And we've learnt the rudiments of the business in the Hanover House of Oppenheim, another prominent Jewish banking family. He then moved on to serve as an agent at the course of William from the German state of Hesse-Kassel. Over the years, a portion of his income gradually turned in favour of banking business. Beginning at the 1790s, he was no more than a prosperous antique dealer. By 1797, he was one of the richest Jews in Frankfurt, and the central part of his business was unmistakably banking. So he's going on about the kids he had. There's the crest. Interesting, it's just one face of the... Is it the ultimate? I don't think so. The heart, fleur-de-lis, all in there. So it's them established in the 5 hours. As a result of his business, Mayer Amschel amassed an immense fortune. In 1810, he established a partnership with 4 sons, still in Frankfurt, and renamed his firm A. Rothschild and Son. When he died, 19th September 1812, his oldest son Amschel Mayer assumed control over the firm. Amschel was one of the first Rothschilds. It was his chore to apply for honours and consulships on the brothers' behalf, to condole or congratulate emperors and kings. So we know this stuff. The London House there, you have the Paris House, Vienna House, the Naples House. The Rothschilds and Napoleonic Wars. Says, following the eruption of the Napoleonic Wars, Rothschild's wealth reached an unprecedented level. So obviously they were funding both. And I think the mother said, did she not? There would be no war if my sons did not wish it. So they were creating them to profit on all sides and further install this banking system, the central banking system that everybody were borrowing off. Remember, court financiers for a hidden royalty. Again, cite you back to those families that we had a look at the other week. According to Ferguson, probably the most important Rothschild agent in the 1830s was Daniel Weisweiler, who had been sent to Madrid. It was in Spain where, in 1835, Rothschilds acquired Almadan Company, specialising in quicksilver production and gold refinement. Now, it's been very important that they get all the quicksilver, which is mercury, of course, because they've had to pretend it's deadly poisonous and that we can't touch it, because they didn't want us making anti-gravity craft in our garage. And I read something interesting this week. I actually put the book up on the site because it has some interesting takes on this flat earth game. But while I was reading it, it also mentioned the fact that when they'd gone to visit a khan in Tartary, they had fountains of quicksilver in the city. Fountains of quicksilver. So, again, further suggesting it's not poisonous at all in the way they say. You probably won't want to eat it, but it's more on the idea that they don't want us going anywhere near it because, of course, you could. This is with magnets and the mercury is the way you create your own within a aircraft, and that's the last thing they want, isn't it? So, yeah. So they were dealing in that. That's back in 1852. So then they got the enterprise was extremely significant in upcoming decades because in 1852 the London House was granted a lease on the Royal Mint refinery and basically created a monopoly in gold bullion production. So we can see that that was always in the hands of the Venetians. So the Rothschilds are operating for the Venetian nobility, the black nobility, the nobility that we have. And if you want, I can remind you of that video of that bunch of people, because the names you need to get into your mind, these family names, because then you'll start to see them when you're studying stuff. Whereas if you don't know a name, you can go over names and it doesn't bat an eyelid because you don't know it. But once you start to become aware of these names, it does help you to see. Rothschilds in the 20th century, 1919, 12th September, just a few months after the Treaty of Versailles ended the Great War, Rothschilds reached another financial milestone. So again, they're profiting all the time off these wars. On that day, the first ever gold fixing took place on London's New Court in the offices of N.M. Rothschild and Sons. The London House was joined by 4 other major bullion firms, Macotta and Goldsmith, Pixley and Abel, Samuel Montague and Co., and Short Wilkins. For the rest of the 20th century up to 2004, gold price on the global markets would be set under the Rothschilds' supervision. Yeah. In the decade following the Second World War, Rothschilds continued to expand their activities across numerous countries and all continents. For this purpose, the family established, merged, renamed, or even closed several banking and financial entities, of which some are relevant for the thesis practical part. So you've got these La Compagnia Financiera Edmond de Rothschild, which is going through Jacob Rothschild there, Edmond de Rothschild, Jacob. And it's got all these geezers and operations. You've got De Beers Consolidated by IBM, Deputy Chairman of Milton Keynes Development Corporation, Chairman of British Merchant Banking and Securities House Association, Sir Evelyn Rothschild this, Chairman of The Economist, 7289. You know, that's the guy that you see on the picture giving the finger to Charlie Boy, you know, that we put out a couple of years ago. Yes, that's who that is. That's the power that these people have. So when you see these people in another country, you know that they've got the same kind of stranglehold that they have here. So that's just basically going through all these different. You've got Baron David Rothschild, who again is in those images with his wife, Aldo Brandini. I'm forgetting her name. Is it Olympia? Or is that another one? So ABN AMRO, all these big names that we've all heard of. This is what these guys have been doing, shifting all our wealth and industry over to the east for a very long time. 1996, N.M. Rothschild and Sons Limited formed an equity capital markets joint venture with ABN AMRO. That's a big operation, is that. Pyramid Rothschild's continuation holdings. Just split it up. Victory, descendant of the British Royal Family branch scientist and acclaimed intelligence officer with proven connections to the Cambridge network, also known as Cambridge 4 or Cambridge 5, which has reportedly gone down in history as one of the Soviet Secret Service most successful penetrations. So it's all, yeah. Everything they set up in Russia, Bolshevism, set it up in China, and now it's come back over this through the anchor. We've not been paying attention, and that Israel is the deep state centre of this web that's been the enabler for them to take our technology into Israel, build their own technology, then sell it back to us, that they've got back doors in to control it. Yeah, all it's going over the east, all these back doors are going to be available then to the east. So why America is sending its entire army down there is because the might of this network. And it's not just Rothschilds, like I'm saying, because they just fix it to one section of society. They're the core financiers for this Holy See bunch of families, and they come from all over the shop. You know, below that you've got Committee 300. The 300 most prominent families in each nation, which means obviously the most brutal, get the seat on the table. This is how it works. Ferguson further added that NM Rothschild Group was controlled by the family through another Swiss company, Rothschild's Concordia AG, which has a majority at 52.4% stake in Rothschild's Continuation Holdings AG. Closely linked to the structure is the Paris Orleans Holding Company, which controls 37% of Rothschild's, and C Bank in Paris, around 40% of Rothschild's North America, 22% of Rothschild's Canada, and 40% of Rothschild's Europe. In addition, cool grief, over there in Switzerland. In addition to the affiliated companies listed above, there was also smaller subsidiaries, and thus, in 1997, there were offices in Argentina, Bermuda, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Czech Republic, Indonesia, Isle of Man, Japan, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Malta, Mexico, New Zealand, Poland, Russia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Ooh! At the beginning of the 21st century, illustrates the continuity of the family proximity to power. In 2000, during the finishing presidency of Bill Clinton, Sir Evelyn de Rothschild and Lynn Forrester had their honeymoon at the White House. Now, she's a very powerful lady. Of course, Evelyn's dead, the finger pointer. She's now took the role, and this woman is exceptionally powerful in this financial mix. And they had the honeymoon at the White House. Goodwin 2017, and that's from Goodwin. In 2004, Rothschild sold the place in the gold fixing scheme to Bank Nova Scotia. So that's Canada. So there might be truth to this build-up of UN, because Canada, you know, it's like Scotland. They built up the base, the power base of where they live. Scotland feigned it to everybody that England's running the show. This is what I said years ago, that they're setting up over on the North American continent. But also you've got then coming up the immigrants from the south. We're facing the same gig. The difference is the Americans are armed. We're going to have to get armed first if we're going to deal with all that malarkey, I would suggest. It's not good, is it? Whichever way we look at it. In his 2009 interview with CCTV dialogue programme, David René de Rothschild said it was his decision based on the fact that in a low-margin gold market, the company had to manage vast quantities of the commodity in order to make a profit, and it was no longer an essential undertaking for them. Nathaniel Rothschild, a descendant of the British branch, co-founded the company Atticus in 1995. In the following decade, it became one of Wall Street's most powerful hedge funds, with 10 billion of assets under administration, and a reputation for playing rough. Reportedly named after Atticus Finch, the fearless lawyer who fights for the underdog in To Kill a Mockingbird, the fund had helped derail a bid by Germany's Deutsche Börse to acquire the London Stock Exchange and push European steelmaker Arcelor to merge with the rival Mittal Steel Co. Trump, hang on, what forgot here, there's something going on here with Trump. Later, several prominent politicians arrived on the political stage with an experience from one of the Rothschild banks, to name just some of the alumni. French President Emmanuel Macron earned about 2.9 million as an investment banker at Rothschild between 2008 and 2010. So there's your Macron. Noted for his role in advising Nestle on the acquisition of the Pfizer unit. And that were written down in 2017. Even though Sir Evelyn and Lady Lynn openly supported Hillary Clinton in the 2016 US presidential elections, they had a rather interesting connection to Donald Trump's cabinet. The reason is Trump's appointment of one of the most experienced former Rothschild employees in America, Wilbur Ross, as Secretary of Commerce. Though this might seem only a coincidence and far-fetched, speculation. Fact is that between the 1970s and 1990s, Ross spent 25 years in Rothschild Inc., heading the bankruptcy division, and more importantly, it was Ross who provided massive loans which helped Trump keep his ownership of the Taj Mahal casino during the 1980s credit crisis. So, of course, Donaldo has to pay that back. Okay, so that's Trump bagged. So he's definitely tied into the Rothschilds. In 2016, Rothschilds Trust Guernsey Limited, now Sequent Guernsey Limited, was listed amongst the top 10 users of Panamanian legal firm Mossack Fonseca. Alongside HSBC, Coutts, UBS and others. I've done a couple of reports on Mossack Fonseca actually. According to the leaked documents that become known as Panama Papers, these institutions have been creating offshore tax havens for their clients for decades. Yep. Switzerland's big in the Saxon Rothschild firms among Switzerland's largest law firm clients. That's Thyssen, Saxon, Rothschild. Regarding the size and potential global impact, probably the most significant project currently managed by the family is the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism, of which Lady Lynn Forrester de Rothschild is the founder and chief executive. The Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism has several sub-projects, such as the Council for Inclusive Capitalism with the Vatican, defined as a historic collaboration of CEOs and global leaders working with the moral authority of Pope Francis and Cardinal Peter Turkson to harness the private sector to create a capitalism that is more fair, inclusive and sustainable. Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism 220. Another vital sub-project is the Embankment Project for Inclusive Capitalism, EPIC, launched in 2017. According to its 2018 report, the coalition, Ernst & Young and 31 companies, asset managers and asset owners with approximately US dollars 30 trillion of assets under management came together in pursuit of a single goal to identify and create new metrics to measure and demonstrate long-term value to financial markets. That's a lot of money, a lot of assets rather. China's political and economic framework. There are not many countries that went through a more turbulent development in past centuries than China. For more than 2 millennia, the country was reigned by a number of successive dynasties or hereditary monarchical regimes, in which the emperor traditionally held the highest power over society as well as its economic and political aspects. Throughout the history, China has undergone alternating cycles of prosperity and decline, but eventually reached the position of one of the world's largest and most advanced economies. Within the international framework, Chinese rule has regarded self-sufficiency in high regard and thus avoided far-reaching expansionist tendencies, even though the country had the means to become a colonial power many decades before the European countries in the 15th century started to dominate other continents. China traditionally engaged in tea, silk, porcelain and manufactured goods export, which over time created large favourable trade balances with the West and kept it until the First Opium War of 1839 and 1842. Now remember that Rothschilds are controlling, and the Holy See families, the East India Companies at that time, which is basically who carried out these opium wars. And of course the British government was used as a sort of scapegoat to it all. And the real power was always going on with the Admiralty. When Rothschilds conducted the first cooperation with the Middle Kingdom in 1838, it was under the reign of Dao Gang, the 7th emperor of the Qing dynasty. After suffering the defeat from Western powers in the Opium Wars, China had to open various treaty ports along its coast for international trade, with foreigners operating under the extraterritorial law. This event brought fundamental and long-lasting changes to the Chinese monetary and banking system, coming from the simultaneous establishment of Western merchant houses and later banks that engaged in money exchange and trade finance. Those banks coming from the West as well as Japan began to accept deposits and issued banknotes convertible into silver. Now, you know, when you look at that Scientology film about Last Samurai, that's why Japan were involved in all this. This is where they sort of took the tit of this system and then were used to undermine China by this same system. Weird, isn't it, that China now has completely been taken over by that very system, and they seem to be very happy to go with it, which I suppose every nation does when the empire comes calling and offers you its jingle jangle. The political and economic framework of the PRC. Now, this is interesting because this gives them another insight into Taiwan. After the PRC was founded on October the 1st, 1949, the CCP's leader, Mao Zedong, a new socio-political system that stressed the class struggle and the fight against bourgeois, emerged in China. At the same time, Kuomintang nationalist government led by Chiang Kai-shek moved to Taiwan. So the losing side in the battle that gave the People's Republic of China and Mao, the super communists, weren't annihilated, it just shifted over to Taiwan. So there's two sides. There's China the new and the old is still in Taiwan. That's been played, hasn't it? Interesting. So I thought that was interesting as well. Every time I read any of it, it's so interesting. The data in here is unbelievable. So Alibaba has a manifold connection to the Rothschilds, which is covered later in this thesis. The company nowadays is the world's biggest e-commerce market, launched Alipay back in 2004, thus establishing the first Chinese online payment intermediary, an electronic third-party payment system. So the Rothschilds are so the real beneficiaries of these electronic currencies is the bankers. So it's the Rothschilds, it's all the Sea families. China's just becoming another minion of it. But in doing it in this way, they get to completely wreck the West. Or get the West to completely wreck itself, which he's done a damn good job at for a long time. So to this side of Asia, it's just war. So it's all, when you're getting into this, it's looking at what they've done. It's the system that they've created, the regulatory systems that they've put in as banking systems into these countries is what gives them the power. And that's a pretty interesting diagram as well, because involved in it, as we know, is HSBC, Hong Kong. So Hong Kong weren't this supreme. It was always a point by which the public side of this empire had its teeth into China, and it was a bridge between China and the West. Singapore's another, Taiwan's another. But now the externalization of the hierarchy is coming out in the open, isn't it, from 2025. So they don't need these scapegoat things anymore. They're just going to come front on and say, this is who we are, we own the lot. So it's not China, really. It's just another corporation that happens to sit on China as people with Chinese people. Put out a script to Chinese people that they've took on. No different than any other nation does when it comes to this empire. According to the respected Merrick's Institute for China Studies, following can be observed under China's party and state leader Xi Jinping. A few central organisations have evolved to become a true nerve centre of the Chinese Communist Party, which is the CCP. Those so-called central commissioners and leading small groups constitute the political core executive and give the central leadership around core leader Xi significant influence over strategic policy making. So you only need to be controlling Xi, and the whole gig, the whole corporation as a dictatorship is in your hands. The article further states that by positioning himself and his aides in leadership positions of this core executive, Xi has become the most powerful leader since Mao Zedong. Xi's redirection of authority over crucial issues back to the inner circle of the party and stronger central steering has replaced the more decentralised policy-making approach of his predecessors. Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, the stated goal of this more centralised governance is to strengthen Communist Party rule and to turn the Chinese Party state into a modern, disciplined and efficient administration. Remember that that's going to do the world. It's not just for over there. They're setting it up there. This is what they're going to hand the West to it, and everybody, Islam, everybody, going to be handed over to this. But the Rothschilds, when you start to see what they've set up, they're the chief executors, you might say, but more importantly, beneficiaries of more than enough capital, assets, but also, more importantly, influence. It's the influence. This is in 1887, Aline Caroline de Rothschild, the granddaughter of Jacob, marries Edward Albert Sassoon. Sassoon's originally Baghdadi Jews were also called the Rothschilds of the East. The reason behind this is understood when we take into considering the scope of their business in the Orient. The House of David Sassoon & Co. had branches at Calcutta, Shanghai, Canton and Hong Kong, and his business, which included a monopoly of the opium trade. You see that? A monopoly of the opium trade. Yeah, so Sassoon. Monopoly of the opium trade. They were running it. Extended as far as Yokohama, Nagasaki and other cities in Japan. Sassoon attributed his great success to the employment of his sons and his agents and to his strict observance of the law of tithe or tithe. That comes directly from the Jewish Encyclopedia. But we've covered this stuff when we did that video on these guys. According to the author, relations then and Rothschild were particularly close, and the family members acted as intermediaries in the negotiations which led to the Accord on China loans between Hong Kong Bank and Deutsche Asiatische Bank in 1895. As a reward, as Jones, Hong Kong Bank agreed that if he needed help in placing a China loan in London, it would offer the business first to Rothschild. Subsequently, in 1899, Cole Mayer, a very close associate of Rothschild, joined the London Committee of the Hong Kong Bank. Considering the sheer volume of international activities in which the Rothschilds were involved at this time of history, and this is 1899, we can now understand Ferguson's statement that late 19th century imperialism was the political accompaniment to an economic process similar to the globalisation of the late 20th century. As leading members of that elite of imperial investors, the Rothschilds' role in British imperialism was substantial. So what we've seen now, this reset stuff, as we've said before, a reset from 1850. They did it then, from 1850. You've got foundlings, you've got orphans, you've got all this mass movement. You've got all these programs emptying here onto Blighty, they're emptying onto America. You've got the First World War. They kill all our men. They slaughter all the men over in Europe nearly. Bolshevism's released. That's back end Russia. Kick it off again in Europe. Demolish Germany. You can see Federal Reserve before that achieved. You know, whether you take on the ideas that the Titanic were a part of that gig, I don't know. But so much has gone on, and it just all fits together like a glove when you dip your feet into the secret society side of things and you start to get a grip of that. Because when you see a name like N.M. Rothschild, you know that at the back of that is a huge intelligence network, financial network, commerce, shipping, everything is tied to that. It's a massive thing. And there's a lot of these things in here in China. Later in 1911, Rothschilds exchanged their entire Russian. Later in 1911, the Rothschilds exchanged their entire Russian oil operation for shares in Royal Dutch and Shell, making them the largest shareholder in each. So they were big in the Russian oil operation by 1911, and they exchanged all of it for shares in Royal Dutch and Shell, making them the largest shareholders in each. Now, Royal Dutch and Shell, if I remember rightly, was some way tied to the split of Standard Oil, but I might be incorrect. But a lot of the companies that we see as separate were actually what was Standard Oil originally, and they broke it up, didn't they? So that's 1911, so that's before Federal Reserve, and it's also before World War One. So, you know, they just set up another system as we have here over there, and that's what you can see them doing in all this data. In the late 1970s, as soon as Beijing's post-Mao leaders decided it was time to undertake wide-ranging economic reform, which some had in mind since the early 1950s, discussions were held with leading foreign economic experts invited to China. Intentionally or not, most of them were Jewish. Historically, Jews were usually associated with money, for better or for worse, skilled in commerce and banking, educated, urban yet highly mobile, and with worldwide family connections. Jews represented modernity and a more significant driving force behind capitalist growth and development. Jews also excelled in research. 40% of all Nobel Prize winners in economics and 51% of all US economics Nobel Prize winners were Jewish. Some of them helped China to become a second, perhaps the leading world economic power. Right. So part of this idea for your Nobel Peace Prize is you've handed power over there. The voyage of Sir Evelyn paved way for further visits by representatives of the family bank. 79, Emma Rothschild was suddenly was financial advisor to two UK companies, National Coal Board and Northern Engineering Industries. Well, that's interesting because National Coal Board, Coal Light, Thatcher's husband, very involved in that. Falklands, the company owned, Coal Light owned the Falkland Islands, Port Stanley. Interesting, it gets deep, but they're all over the shop, this lot. Through the cooperation agreements with China, North Industries Corporation, Norinco, and Great Wall Industries Corporation, Rothschilds also get involved in the Chinese military industry, though no details are publicly available. Rothschild has been a project financing consultant in the subsequent development of China's communication satellites. Well, I don't buy the satellite idea, because otherwise they wouldn't need all these poles, these masts on the ground. It's all down here. You look at all, when they broadcast satellite TV, no such thing. It's a satellite dish, but they're always pointing to the nearest antenna. Always. Because it's a blag. I'm not saying they don't have satellites, and I'm not saying they can't utilise certain things up there. But this idea that up there is just laced with satellites is complete and utter garbage. If it were not so, they wouldn't need all this shit down on the ground, which they've been pumping in this last 3 years, as you know. So it's getting into all advisory stuff that they get into. Memorandum of Understanding with the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Just in the decade 1994 and 2004, Rothschilds provided consulting services for 55 projects in China, with the total value of US $48 billion. In 2000, the family established Rothschilds China Holdings Limited in Beijing to further expand the business. In Beijing, to further Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Interactions between Rothschilds and entities in PRC, whether it be state-owned companies, politicians, officials, private enterprises, and other groups, literally skyrocketed since China entered the WTO. So obviously they were building up the system enough to get them in a position where they could invite them to join the WTO, and then they've been intermingling properly. So, Biden dealing in China, Russia dealing, everybody's dealing in China because they're in the WTO. But we're presented it as though it's a battle, and really they're just doing deals. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's a really solid paper. And if you're interested in this, you really want to take a look at that. It's very interesting and very worrying at the same time. Now, this was interesting it's a book. I'll put it up on site, but just going through it, this is where I found the fountains of quicksilver. But I just wrote a few things down that I thought were interesting, especially in some of today's topics that people find interesting. That is, Christopher Columbus was born about the year 1435 in the city of Genoa, Italy, and followed the life of a mariner, hearing of the discoveries made by Marco Polo, a Venetian, during his journey eastward overland in the 12th century in Eastern and Central Asia, and his navigation on the Pacific Ocean and along the shores of India, and of the discoveries made in Africa by the Portuguese King Henry, coupled with his correspondence with Toscanelli, a learned cosmographer, led Columbus to believe the Earth a sphere. He formed the conclusion that if Marco Polo reached India, the kingdom of the Grand Khan of Tartary, by travelling eastward, he would certainly reach the opposite coast of India by sailing westward pace 10. So he had to be convinced that it was a sphere, because up until that time, everybody just said it was flat. But Grand Khan of Tartary, again, I've said of this yellow race, I don't believe it's China or Japan, although they're tied into it like we all are. But I think the real players are idiots, this bunch that come through and around them, whoever the Mongols were. But we still have to explore that further. So Columbus, after waiting 7 years and suffering great disappointment, succeeded in having his theory discussed at a meeting of prelates and learned men at the convent of St. Stephen's at Salamanca. But his theory of the world being a sphere was condemned. They ridiculed the theory of antipodes and their heads hanging downwards, it being contrary to the belief of their theologians and philosophers and in violation of the sacred scriptures.
They argued that if the world was round, then a vessel attempting to make the ascent of the sphere would fall off into space. They also argued that the Earth was a flat surface, bordered by the waters of the sea, on the yielding support of which rested the crystalline dome of the sky, and the sun, moon, and planets were a subordinate nature, their use being to give light to man, who was elevated to supreme importance. The patristic geography had governed the Christian Church for 12 centuries, and was its authority for rejecting the theory of the sphericity of the earth. Columbus defended his theory nobly and with religious fervour. The decision was unfavourable to him. The ancient philosophers and astronomers introduced various theories regarding the sphericity of the earth and the manner of its revolution. The heliocentric theory taught by Pythagoras about 550 years BC placed the sun as the centre around which all other planets and the earth revolved, in circular orbits, each supposed to rotate on its axis as it revolved around the sun. This theory was accepted by Aristarchus of Samos, but 350 years EC, and was superseded by the geocentric system of Ptolemy, about 150 years AD, which system placed the Earth in the centre, fixed in space, the Sun and the other planets revolving around it, thus giving the Earth a position of superiority. This theory was accepted by a large portion of the inhabitants of the Earth for 14 centuries. No advancement was made toward establishing the theories of the ancients, or the geography of the Earth, or the science of astronomy, until the advent of Columbus and his discovery of America in 1492, and the circumnavigation of the Earth by Magellan in 1521, which proved its sphericity, and whose circumference is about 25,000 miles. And that's page 11 and 12, if you want to just go direct to that. But in there as well, before that, I came across the Fountains of Quicksilver. So I have a funny feeling this is an interesting book, and it's the discovery of America, an outgrowth of the conquest of the Moors by the Spaniards. So it's an interesting take on the gig. Now, for some reason, it doesn't show up in this, and I don't know why. But if you just hit the download, it takes you to the document. And if you just right-click the document, you can actually make it smaller. Yeah. You can play with it like that. So there you go. And it's a very interesting little book from what part I've read of it so far. So there we go. Interesting data. As we all get ready for the old firework gig and all that malarkey. Let's have a look. Where are you guys seeing? Oh, you've been chat. I've never, Trine says she's never heard of Humza. He just sprang out of nowhere, yeah, don't they all? Springs everybody in Magic Roundabout, they appear. Ermintrude, I blame Ermintrude. He likes a fucked up version of, yeah. Well, I don't really see much about Doubtfire, but you might be right, yeah, because he's Scottish, isn't he? Oh no, Mrs. Doubtfire, that's, what's he called? Guitar spot on green, lol. Sorry, autocorrect on my phone. Alright, for Trina, that's it. Hey, GG, I have typolexia a lot. Right, so you guys are chit-chatting. You lost your connection. Oh. 33 of them. I Love Dog says, knowing we're too late to join chat, glad I got here on time this week. Thanks for your hard work and information. Wishing you and yours a peaceful new year from the Emerald Isle. Well, thank you very much. And the same to you and yours, I Love Dogs. Terrible what they're doing with these things, isn't it? Mind you, I wouldn't. I'd just ignore it, me. Telling me what to do with me dog. David Gray says, oops, mix the name up. Fleur de Lis Club is the more secret club. Jerry, son of Mick, says, very prominent symbol of the Cub Scout, yeah. But have they bastardised it? You know what I'm saying? You've got to remember what Hitler did with a lot of the old symbols. He inverted them. And that then, because they're all about removing you from your history. Because if you remove people from their history, they don't know who they are. And if you invert, so if all of a sudden your culture's got all these symbols, all these, architecture, these styles, and somebody all of a sudden turns it into something evil, it's a disconnect. It's clever stuff what they do. They bloody own everything. Well, they've made a claim of rights, haven't they? Them the Popish people. Now we can see how they see us. But I don't think it's always been that way, as I've said before. If there are those in the upper echelons who are watching and waiting in the wings, I don't believe any of us would know of them, as they know the game and when to play their hand, I hope. Well, the power guy, the one that said they were ruling family, said none of them, he knew of, very few, were operating according to their own doctrine. So, they play a long game, says Guitar Girl. They're flexible and willing to wait generations if need be. How many centuries and millennia have they been building this system? I reckon at least 4,000 to 5,000 years. Well, I did do a piece, the Essenes, on the side, which pretty much sort of follows the available data showing the two sides, dark light, after the flood. And yeah, it's an interesting read if you're into that. I'll put that up. Loads of Chinese people in Warrington and Widnes. Sean's Chinese pronunciation is very good. Well, thank you, Ricardo. I mean, I know a few Chinese people. They're nice people. And, China, as we looked at before, have played this big game to try and convert everybody that's Chinese abroad to join and become spies and operate for the PRC. How that's gone down, I don't know. But you've got triads here, Hong Kong Society, all these dragon orgies there all year. And anybody that's worked in Hong Kong, that's the game that was. Because the triads, Hong Kong Societies and the dragon orgies were the ones that actually sold the opium inside China. You can't believe they're human at all. But they are. I mean, they are human. You saw them all in that. You saw them all. The human, the people. All this, the lizards and the this and the that. Okay, that's a descript more of the character trait rather than it has to go full down and the shapeshifting. I've tried to shapeshift, I can't do it. I might be a dud, but I can't do it. But I mean, doesn't it just, if you dehumanise folk, which is a big part of what propaganda is about, isn't it? To dehumanise one set of people, and then you're away, you're off, which is what's happened here on Blighty, in the US, in Europe. They've imported a mindset that's that. And you're also busy watching telly. I know you're fussed on the last 3 years, you're dealing with that. It's clever, and they're a lot further down, and people just don't want to see it. Well, you better see it, because it's happening. We might find they are of the same blood type train and different of age. You see, why do they have to be different? There are people born into it, and are trained into it. They don't know any different, as you don't know any different to your experiences in your life. And as I said the other week, it's all that's building is, as we find out more at Revelations, they're like, oh, we're going, oh. The only thing that's getting bigger is fear, so there's never going to be any. And another way to solve this problem would be offer an amnesty to every single political that's been held in some kind of blackmail. Full amnesty. And they have to give up their handlers. Then we can get rid of the networks, because that's where it's at. Most people, they're just victims. And not always because they are what they're being portrayed to be. Most of it's trickery that they do. They're not actually paedophiles. They're not actually child molesters. You know what I mean? It's trickery that these people play. In a lot of the ways, like a lot of these mind control people that came out originally, saying that they've been abducted by aliens and all that, have started to, as their program is broke down, and realised that they were just people dressed up to look like this. I mean, even Satanism as a thing is a spell, in that people that are coming out telling you about it, that's the experience they've had, but it doesn't mean to say that that's exactly what happened. And then when you're dealing with drugs as well, you hallucinogens, anybody that's done that stuff, you know how easy it is to go off on jingle jangle because you've seen something that you've read about, or you've seen something that you know other people have known. It's ancient, and you fix to it. Then you're stuck. Yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy gig, this, I'll tell you. Just focus on where you're placing yourself. Exactly. What else? You can jump on these scripts if you want, and because you're bored, or you feel you're inclined to do it, but ultimately, these scripts are going to run all by themselves. They don't need your help. As it stands, as things are going on at the moment, protests have been happening for people who want a stop to the slaughter, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good gig. But on the back of that, you've got all these little fringe numpty jobs coming out with all sorts of nonsense. The police need to deal with them properly and don't mess about. You know what I'm saying? If they're committing violence for you, your job is to keep the peace. You have to come with more violence against these immigrants, and they need to start to understand that no. Whatever you've been told before you came here about the only thing that's true is they'll give you loads of our cash, they'll give you your phone, you can sit with television, etc, etc. And if you're there to bet, you can drive around in a nice big flash BMW and piss the natives off. Exactly as were going on in Germany back in the old days. It wasn't until this time, when this started happening, where they were throwing it back in the Germans' faces, that the Germans actually rose. And look what happened after that. Yeah, not good, was it? Not good for anybody, let's be honest. But I think we really need to start to reckon with the fact that this Gen Z, these real young ones, are apparently untrainable. You can't deal with them, you can't communicate with them. That's a serious position. That's a generation. How that's come to that, I don't know. Gerrymandering, yeah, I heard RH negative blood type, though there are a few different ones. My mum was recently negative, so it's shown, I believe, that there are a few types. Is it not just down to character? Yeah, regardless of your bloodline, is it not just down to your own strength of character, and are you going to dance to these genetic memories if they become active? Because you've watched the Gladiator and you now think you're back at Rome. Because all them memories are being triggered in your DNA. So even if you're a Protestant, you were going, yeah! You know what I mean? Because they're activating them latent memories. That's what film is. But from 225, the hierarchy is now going to be externalised. So get ready for that. We're talking finance. And then we've got this. We've got... where is it? There we go. No, see, I nearly did it then. I nearly cocked it up. We have the full list of Baba Vanga's alarming predictions for 2024. Now, she was wrong on quite a few things last year. She died in 1996. And she can vote an accuracy of about 85%. She said that... Hang on, wait a minute. She was blind, of course. What she said was pretty cryptic. So we're saying, horror, the American brethren will fall after being attacked by the steel birds. The wolves will be howling in the bush. And innocent blood will be gushing is apparently an accurate call of 9/11. She also apparently predicted that the 44th president of the US would be a black man, meaning she predicted Barack Obama, while saying he'd be followed by some who would bring the country down, which sounds like Donald Trump. She made predictions for every year up to 5,079, but this year she was wrong about a solar storm hitting the planet and strikes by nuclear bioweapons. Well, is she wrong about that? Or just they're not going to declare it, are they? If they've been playing about with them. And people, this puff of smoke, this big cloud with nuclear, people have to get off that. They've got handheld things. I mean, that's super, super secret kind of stuff, but Nuclear technology doesn't mean it has to go boom in a big mushroom cloud. If 2023 was a dud year for Baba Vanga, then perhaps 2024 will be a return to reasonably accurate form. Well, we don't want it to be. She says Putin assassination. She believes that the Russian leader will be assassinated next year, according to Astro Fame. The Kremlin continued to deny any speculation surrounding the 71-year-old. Increasing terrorist attacks in Europe. In 2023, terror attacks are more deadly, with 26% more people dying in each incident. First rise in lethality in 5 years, according to the Global Terrorism Index. Well, of course, we know that most of this terror in the West is fake up. So what is it, more fake ups? Biological attacks. Similar to last year's prediction, she believes that a big country will conduct biological weapon tests or attacks in 2024. I wonder if it would be something like Canada or Australia, where, because they seem to be a bit more severe in these countries because they're so vast with, not such a huge population. 4, huge economic crisis. She's predicted a major economic crisis in 2024, but I think we're all pretty much expecting that. Baba believed that geopolitical tensions, a shift in economic power from the west to the east, and escalating debt levels could be an issue. Those are the big 4 predictions she made for 2024. So if she's right, then we're in for some turbulent times. And another economic crisis, which is a bit of a pisser, since we haven't properly recovered from the last 2 or 3 yet. Perhaps we should cross our fingers and hope that this is another one of the 15% years that she's wrong. She did predict her own death accurately, and claims are often vague, enough to give her a bit of protection under ambiguity. So there's the predictions of the Flossie. It's always handy to be keeping in mind, because a lot of the time they turn out great, don't they? So there. Where are we? Very interesting. It says space hopper mark. Two-tone ancient Phoenicians. Yep. Venetian. Black nobility. I read the Aborigines of the most rarest bloodline. I have looked at stuff like that as well, but I couldn't come to an absolute conclusion on this bloodline stuff, because I think a lot of gerrymandering's going on, a bit of mucking about. Jerry says the people are but tools and pawns. Why they play a deadly game of Monopoly? Yeah, precisely. I had to pick a death cert up on Friday. I had to sign with a fountain pen. I was closing my mother's account, which required a wet ink signature. My question is why? Shame you didn't try to take command of it, Paul. Really? Why wet ink? I think it's got something to do with liquid blood kind of thing. If it's not red, it's not signifying blood, but it's just the liquid, the fluid. I don't know. There will be a reason though. Yeah, sorry for your loss there, Paul, as well. It's sad. Jerry like they're playing a game of chess with us. Well, they are. They're in a game of chess. We're the pawns. You're the pawn. What level do you want to come? If you become I'm a religious person, well, you might be able to be close to the bishop. You're working for the bishop. If you're a bit of a warrior, you might be working for the castle. You know, you might become a captain. You know what I'm saying? You might work your way up to a knight. There's your castle. You know? It's there. It's there for you to see. I agree, full amnesty to all those leaders with their hands. Yeah, but it's the other way. You would never get your politics back without that. It's impossible. It's impossible to get your politics back without something of that magnitude. And what's wrong with... You see, this is the thing. You know, Jews and Muslims are pretty stuck in this war because neither of them have forgiveness in their theology. They don't have forgiveness as a method We do. We do. So we can forgive as people, the people, we can forgive them all if they come through. Who's pushing the buttons. Then we can wipe out the network. David says, more likely north to south rather than east to west. Paul says, thanks, Mew. Okay, the audit agent said they use special coroner's ink that doesn't fade. Ink doesn't fade cleanly. Legible on Magna Carta. Jerry, son of Mick, says, with all the madness aside, I wish you all Happy New Year. And a couple of mushrooms. Few pieces I also had to sign with a fountain pen, yeah. Well, it is all the law, isn't it? And that's why it's important that you get a wet signature off a magistrate. Or, it's not a liability order. Is it? With that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say, that's another year done. I hope I've made sense in this year and picked something up of value. I think we might look this year to looking for outpatients that we may term as outpatients of the Wise Asylum, if we feel the good eggs. Yeah, who knows what's coming and what's around the corner, but I'm still looking at this law stuff. I'm about to jump back on it right after Christmas. I've had a bit of a break. Just stopped thinking as much for a while. It's done me the world of good, I have to say. And we'll see what the new year brings. So, thanks for joining. Thanks for taking part. Mods, if you're there, thank you very much for modding. And I hope you can carry on a modding in the new year. With that, ladies and gents, I will say, I wish you all a happy new year. And I'll see you. Till the next time.
Rothschild.